Thank you, Mr Speaker. The nation's favourite way to save is through premium bonds. Does the Minister think that they are good for the country, a valuable way of encouraging saving, and for everyone who has them, quite exciting every month?
Mr Speaker, I think they do provide excitement, not least in my parents' household. I think they're very popular with them. They're already well promoted and very popular, and we've seen annual investments in premium bonds increase by over 50% since March 2019, and the funds raised through them go towards supporting vital public services.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the Government's commitment to extend the Help to Save scheme. This scheme's been running for 7 years. Martin Lewis describes it as a very clever scheme and one that will work for many people. Can I urge the Minister to look at what needs to be done to raise awareness of it? Because the actual uptake is very low, given that the Government are going to give £1,200 and have been giving £1,200 over 4 years. It is critical that the right investment in promoting this happens, because it's such a brilliant scheme.
Well, I couldn't agree with one of my predecessors more. I think he's absolutely correct. It's a great scheme, and now that we are expanding it, we'll take that opportunity to promote it better.
Dame Meg Hillier, Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, we all know how important it is to encourage savings, because so many people are a paycheck away from poverty. But there's been a lot of discussion about lazy capital in cash-only ISAs, for example, and other savings accounts. And I know there's a drive by government to see greater investment. Would the Minister like to expand on the government's thoughts on this, and particularly if she can make any comments about the security of the cash ISA?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Cash savings provide a vital source of income, of savings for a rainy day. We recognise that. But equally, we want to build a better investment culture in our society, so that it's not just the 8% of people who can afford financial advice who can have the opportunity of better rewards by investing in British companies and others in our economy.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On that point, it's been widely reported that the Chancellor is planning to slash the amount that savers can save in ISAs from £20,000 to £4,000 per year. Will the Chancellor rule out this punitive measure that will see savings drop and push even more people into income tax?
We are committed to promoting savings and investment, as I said in an earlier answer, and one of the measures that we are looking at is the FCA's review of the advice guidance boundary, because I said in a previous answer, I don't want it just to be the 8% of people who can afford financial advice to reap the rewards of investing in our economy. All taxes under review.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The City of London has been a leader of innovation in the world of finance and savings for a few hundred years now, and it's been successful because it has always seized opportunities and innovation when presented. And in that spirit, we are pleased that the Chancellor, in her Mansion House speak, embraced the concept of securities tokenisation. But we now find that the catalyst of this innovation in the UK, a pilot for the digital gilt instrument known as Digit, has found itself in a 2-year black hole. Innovation is not something that can hang around for 2 years. So can the Minister give assurances that she will do everything she can to deliver Digit as soon as possible?
Thanks, Mr Speaker. It sounds like a criticism of his the previous government. I can reassure the honourable gentleman that we are committed to innovation and indeed committed to Digit.
Louise Jones.
Number 2, Mr Speaker.
Chancellor.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I should like to answer this question together with question 18. Economic growth is the #1 mission of this government. Putting more money in people's pockets and ensuring growth is felt in all regions of the UK is a core part of our mission. The government has a clear focus on investing in the infrastructure needed to support cities and regions to grow and thrive. In January, the government announced a partnership between East Midlands Airport and Prologis to build a new advanced manufacturing and logistics park, unlocking up to £1 billion of private investment and 2,000 jobs at the airport site.
Louise Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The town of Staveley in my constituency of North East Derbyshire hosts one of the 3 sites for the East Midlands Investment Zone, which is a fantastic opportunity for us. However, the Chesterfield-Staveley regeneration route is vital to making the most of this site and is something long campaigned for by my colleague, the Honourable Friend MP for Chesterfield, and it is a huge priority for my constituents. Will the Treasury work with us and our excellent East Midlands Mayor Claire Ward to bring this hugely beneficial project to fruition?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question and the work that she does alongside with the honourable member, my honourable friend for Chesterfield, to campaign for things that will boost local growth in the area of North East Derbyshire and also in Chesterfield. Regarding the Chesterfield-Staveley regeneration route, the scheme is being considered by the Department for Transport, and I will suggest to the Minister for Roads that he meets with the relevant members as well as the Mayor for the East Midlands, Claire Ward.
Jane Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government's decision to increase defence spending is not only an ironclad commitment to national security in the face of generational challenges, but also an investment in British industry, able to unlock new jobs and opportunities across the country. Industry in the east of England has a significant defence sector, receiving £1.5 billion of government investment last year. So can the Chancellor clarify how the additional defence funding has the potential to benefit my constituents in Thurrock as well as the wider region?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and she is absolutely right that defence has a very important role to play in the growth mission as well as keeping our country safe and secure. On Friday, the Defence Secretary and myself hosted a roundtable at RAF Waddington in Lincoln to announce a new Defence Innovation Hub to harness this potential. And Defence has a strong presence in so many of our constituencies. Indeed, in the east of England, the MOD spending accounted for £1.5 billion, according to the most recent data. And down the road from my honourable friend's constituency in Thurrock is, of course, the historic MOD Shoebury Ness range. MOD and Kinetic operate this site and others as part of a long-term partnership worth over £5 billion. And in the years to come, there will be more investment in defence from both the public and the private sector.
Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the Government's ever-elusive pursuit of economic growth, it has rebranded the UK Infrastructure Bank as the National Wealth Fund. Even the OBR has cast doubt on the effectiveness of this as a driver for economic growth. Can the Chancellor tell the House how much this rebrand has cost?
Chancellor.
The National Wealth Fund is doing important work ensuring that we can leverage in private sector investment. The most recent investments include in mining in Cornwall, in energy charging points in our road infrastructure, and just at the end of last week I announced that the National Wealth Fund will now play a more important role in funding and supporting investments in our defence sector, which is going to be even more important in the years ahead.
Lee Anderson.
I recently visited a business in Kirkby in Ashfield in the East Midlands. Funnily enough, I didn't see the honourable member for Strangford at the time, but this business told me that the increase in national insurance contributions is going to cost them £240,000 a year, which will stop them recruiting people and giving their employees a pay rise next year. So does the Chancellor agree with me? It's time to reverse this ridiculous decision and help drive growth in the East Midlands.
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In the budget in October, I had to fill the £22 billion plaque hole left by the previous government. But there are huge opportunities to grow the economy in the East Midlands. We've recently agreed the £9 billion Unity deal with Rolls-Royce to support the Royal Navy submarine fleet. This is a major boost for economic growth in the East Midlands, creating and maintaining 5,000 long-term jobs. Good for our country's security, good for the people of the East Midlands.
Monica Harding.
Question 3, please, Mr. Speaker.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to answer this question together with question number 20. The Government has taken difficult decisions to repair the public finances, to fund public services and to restore economic stability. The OBR expects the employer national insurance contribution changes will reduce the level of potential output by 0.1% at the forecast horizon. The OBR forecasts growth to pick up next year and living standards to grow faster during this Parliament than the previous one. In the long term, the OBR expects the autumn budget policies, if sustained, to permanently increase the size of the economy.
Monica Harding.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent Alison runs Stepping Stones Nursery, which has been operating in my constituency of Eastern Walton for 30 years, offering wraparound care for busy families. The increase to employers' national insurance alone will cost them £16,000 per year, and they're still struggling with an increase in utility costs. And this is in the context of nurseries in the area struggling and closing. And Headmasters, a hairdresser in Walton, is struggling with £15,000 of extra cost, primarily due to this tax rise. So can the Minister explain to businesses in East and Walton how this government's national insurance policy will deliver growth or higher living standards, because it seems to be doing neither?
Mr. Speaker, the government's decision to increase employer national insurance contributions was one of the toughest decisions we took at the budget, but it was necessary to restore stability to the public finances, because it is only on the basis of having stable public finances and fiscal responsibility that we can boost investment and growth that will make people across Britain better off.
Vera Wilson.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. As the poor growth figures show, the Chancellor's jobs tax is really hurting businesses, not least our hospitality sector. Pubs like the Eel Pie and the King's Head, as well as family-run restaurant shambles in my constituency, are really struggling with soaring costs, putting off hiring people. So if the Chancellor won't reverse her jobs tax, will she at the very least consider extending the current 75% business rates relief for hospitality until the new system she's announced is in place?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member speaks about business rates relief. We've got to remember, of course, that the business rates relief for retail, hospitality and leisure was due to end entirely in April 2025 under plans we inherited from the party opposite when we were in government. Despite the tough fiscal context, we decided to extend that relief, that 40%, for another year before the permanently lower rates for retail, hospitality and leisure come in from April 2026.
Dan Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that planning reform is essential for higher growth and lower taxes? And I'd like to ask, is he, like me, concerned that the anti-growth opposition we see before us in this House will vote against the forthcoming planning and infrastructure bill, possibly the most significant piece of pro-growth legislation this Parliament will see in decades?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and he's absolutely right about the centrality of the planning reform to getting the economy growing. Indeed, one of the first actions the Chancellor announced upon taking office was to scrap the ban on onshore wind turbines in the planning system, which have been holding back our clean energy transition. I hope that some of the members of the opposition might take the opportunity during today's questions to confirm they will support our reforms to the planning system, because they are indeed vital to growth in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that it is in the interests of business to see waiting lists in the NHS reduced, to see our roads repaired and to see the public finances fixed? And does he agree that if the parties opposite don't agree with Labour's plans, they should set out how they would pay for these improvements?
My honourable friend is absolutely right that the stability in the public finances are crucial to make sure that we boost investment and growth across the country. And he's also right to point out that having public services which are back on their feet after years of decline under the party opposite being in government is also essential to not only making people in this country healthier, more able to get around and better off, but to getting our economy growing, because it is on that basis that businesses will invest.
Shadow Minister James White.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Even before Labour's jobs tax comes into force, we can see the damage it's doing, and 750,000 jobs in hospitality will be subject to employer national insurance for the first time, costing £1 billion. So when major hospitality and retail businesses are warning that the lower paid and part-time workers will suffer most, will the Chancellor think again, and can the Minister at least commit there will be no further increases during this Parliament?
Mr. Speaker, the businesses the honourable gentleman referred to, like businesses in all sectors of the economy, benefit from the stability which this government has brought to the economy. And if he wants to talk about unemployment, if he wants to talk about the rate of jobs, we recognise that the changes to employer national insurance contributions were a tough decision that will have consequences. But the unemployment rate will fall to 4.1% next year and remain low until 2029. And when taken together, the budget measures mean that the employment level in this country will increase from 33.1 million in 2024 to 34.3 million in 2029.
The Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Health and wealth are two sides of the same coin, and we will not get economic growth without a healthy population. But as a result of the national insurance contribution changes, the Care Provider Alliance reports that 73% of social care providers will have to refuse new care packages from local authorities or the NHS, and 57% will have to hand back existing contracts. Mr. Speaker, what assurances can the government provide to the huge number of people who are very scared that they will have to go without care and see their lives deteriorate?
Good question.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady makes an important point, but it is also important to point out that tough decisions on taxation have to be made to fund those very services which she is keen to support. However, to her point specifically, to support social care, authorities to deliver key services in light of the pressures, we announced at the Provisional Local Government Finance Settlement a further £200 million for adult and children's social care. This will be allocated by the social care grant, which will bring the total increase in this grant in 25-26 to £880 million, meaning that up to £3.7 billion of additional funding will be provided to social care authorities in 25-26.
Mr. Speaker, ministers will be aware of analysis from the Nuffield Trust that shows that additional grant has been dwarfed by the additional costs that the government is introducing. But on the Great British High Street, we know that our high streets are beautiful features of our cities, market towns and villages. But hospitality, retail, beauty and other service sectors are saying that the combination of national insurance and other changes will be a real hammer blow. If high streets shops start to close, that is bad for economic growth and it's also bad for confidence. So what mechanisms will ministers put in place to monitor the impact of the national insurance contribution changes on the vibrancy and resilience of our high streets?
Well, Mr. Speaker, all measures in the budget were, of course, analysed by the Treasury and the OBR ahead of their announcement, and we keep in constant contact with industry representatives to see how policies are taking place in practice. But I would draw her attention to my earlier remarks to her honourable friend in relation to our business rates reform, which is a vital ask from the retail, hospitality and leisure sector. And after years of chopping and changing from the party opposite, changing reliefs one year to the next, offering no stability whatever to people in that sector, we are introducing permanently lower rates for retail, hospitality and leisure from April 26 and avoiding the complete end of relief that the party opposite left in the in-tray when we arrived in office.
Kevin Bonavia.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I should like to answer this question together with question number 5. The growth mission is the central mission of this government and transport an important enabler of that growth. The spending review delivered a £1.1 billion cash increase to the transport budget in 25-26 compared to 24-25, representing a 1.5% real terms growth with record spending. Further announcements will be made in the spending review.
Kevin Bonavia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency, Stevenage Borough Council are working to secure jobs and opportunity with town centre regeneration underway and over 590 council homes delivered. But outdated infrastructure is holding back growth. Businesses have been clear with me that upgrading Stevenage Station Gateway will unlock growth with the prospect of 15,000 jobs to be delivered and £1.5 billion benefit to the economy each year. So will my right honourable friend meet with me to discuss how we can make the most of this opportunity to unlock economic growth through more infrastructure investment?
My honourable friend is absolutely right that investing in infrastructure will enable growth in towns, villages and cities across the whole of our United Kingdom. We will set out further detail alongside the spending review in our 10-year infrastructure strategy in June. And no doubt Stevenage being sited between London and the Oxford-Cambridge corridor will be benefiting enormously from announcements already made. But decisions on specific schemes will be taken by DfT following the spending review.
Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Midlands Rail Hub is a project which would represent major investment in rail infrastructure across the West Midlands and would crucially mean more frequent trains on the Cross-City line, which serves Lichfield. Before the pandemic, this was the busiest commuter line in the country outside of London. What assurances can the ministers give to me and my constituents that more trains on this line are going to be coming and coming soon?
I thank my honourable friend, who's a strong champion for his constituency and for raising this project with us here in the House today. Rail projects such as the case he's made in his constituency will be an important part of our consideration in the months ahead as part of the spending review, and I'll arrange for him to meet with the appropriate Transport Minister as we make those considerations.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The great university cities of York and Hull are unusual in that they do not have a direct rail line between them. Labour MPs, Liberal Democrat councillors, Conservatives, everyone in the whole region is united in believing that reopening the Beverley to York line so that the two great minsters of Hull and York can be reconnected would bring economic growth and a brighter future for the area. Would the Minister agree to meet with me and colleagues to discuss this project and how it could help unlock the growth which we all seek across the House?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that the right honourable gentleman failed to persuade his party-winning government to open that line over the last 14 years, but I can give him reassurances that this government takes rail infrastructure seriously, and I'll happily consider any detail he wishes to write to me about.
Gregory Campbell.
Mr. Speaker. The economic growth through infrastructure development could be helped in Scotland and Northern Ireland with more money going to the Cairn-Ryan port and the road infrastructure to there. Allied with that, any help that the Department and the Minister and the Chancellor could do on resolving the EU-related trading issues would considerably help Northern Ireland business as well as Scottish business.
The honourable member will know that the government has entered negotiations with our counterparts in the European Commission to improve trade between the UK and the European Union. I had a great meeting last week in Cardiff with finance ministers from the Northern Ireland Executive as well as from Scotland and Wales to discuss these issues and noted that we have given a record-breaking increase in funding to the devolved government so that they can get on with projects such like this, working in partnership with us where we have responsibility still.
Stringer.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I should like to answer this together with question number 16. At Autumn Budget 2024, we set out the first major steps in our approach to regional growth through devolution, investment and reform, and the January Growth Speech regional investment package built on this. We have made clear the government's focus on attracting inward investment across the country and to investing in infrastructure needed to support cities and regions to grow. We have made it clear that the importance of investing in major city regions across the UK will play an important part in this endeavour. For example, if we improve the productivity gap in Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds, we estimate we could deliver an extra £33 billion in economic output.
Remstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was nearly as shocked as when you just called me then, listening to the Chancellor of the Exchequer on Radio 4 talking about economic growth, when she said there hadn't been a new runway built in this country since 1945. Manchester Airport would be very surprised to hear that, because the new runway there has been operating for nearly 25 years. I was shocked by that, but not really surprised, because I think many of the officials in the Treasury who advise her show a startling ignorance of the English regions. And that leads to certain prejudice in the formula they use for calculating whether a scheme should go ahead. Can the Treasury Minister